very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. What an honor to be here. And I've had the pleasure also of seeing a lot of good friends who have been extremely active in this movement to solve the climate crisis for a long, long time. And it's really an inspiring event. And I want to thank Director General Mauro Petriccioni for his wonderful work, and also acknowledge with deep gratitude Mayor Anne Hidalgo, who is not only Mayor of Paris but head of this movement and is launching the Women for Climate initiative and doing other great things. Gina McCarthy, who did a fabulous job at EPA and is now zeroing in on the relationship between climate and health, which is one of the most important relationships in this entire discussion and debate. Mayor London Breed, our host, I think is on the way back here, but I want to thank her and her terrific team for hosting us so well and so graciously. And Vanessa Huac of Telemundo is a longtime friend. She has helped the Climate Reality Project in almost every one of our training programs. Not everyone, but almost everyone. And 24 Hours of Reality and our other programs. And of course, Telemundo is launching this brand new major ongoing initiative on climate. And maybe you had a chance to tell them about that, Vanessa. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to give the closing remarks at this magnificent event. Many of you have heard the old throwaway line, everything's been said, but not everyone has had a chance to say it. And I feel a little bit like that, but it is nonetheless a tremendous honor to be here. And thank you. That's my main message, especially to the mayors and their able staffs, all of those who are supporting the C40 program. It has made a tremendous difference. And to all of you who are a part of it, thank you, thank you. It gives us hope at a time when anybody who struggles with the climate crisis, if they're honest with themselves, admit that every once in a while there's a little struggle between hope and despair. And I always come out on the side of hope, and I truly believe that the evidence amply justifies it. In fact, I think the evidence for the legitimacy of hope is growing and building. And but before I give you the evidence for that hope as I see it, and much of that evidence has been engineered by people in this room, I do want to fall back on the three classic questions about the climate crisis. Must we change? Can we change? Will we change? And to start by giving the latest evidence to support an affirmative answer to that first question, must we change? I've often said every night on the TV news is like a nature hike through the book of Revelation now, and even though some in the media don't always connect the dots, I'm not going to fall into the pattern of saying the media the way someone else does. But I mean, honestly, I don't want to get sidetracked and get into the Trump cul-de-sac we may never escape, and I won't do that. But every time a new outrage comes along now, I have to download some existing outrage to make room for the new outrage. I mean, it's really something, isn't it? There's a lot of misdirection going on to hide the ball and look over here instead of at the latest book or op-ed or whatever. But honestly, the evidence is all around us. And just think about it. Today, a huge climate-enhanced hurricane is taking dead aim at the southeastern coast of the United States. and its impact is made greater by the sea level rise that has already occurred, nothing compared to what's in prospect, so the storm surge is greater. It's crossing over waters of the Atlantic 3.5 degrees warmer than normal, so that's what's making the big storms much more powerful. Overall, the cyclonic storms, hurricanes and cyclones and typhoons don't become more numerous, the scientists predict, but the big ones do. And the intensification of these hurricanes, they go from tropical storms now very quickly to category 3, 4, 5. And today is maybe the first time in history that we have a giant cyclonic storm making landfall in the next 3 days, both in the Atlantic and the Pacific. And actually, Super Typhoon Mangkhut is even larger than Hurricane Florence and is barreling toward the southeastern coast of China. Hong Kong is in the sights in the bullseye of the current track there. And the same thing, it crosses over the warmer water and it gets stronger, and the moisture coming off the oceans. Of course, we have a 5% increase in average humidity worldwide just in the last 30 years, which is a huge number. So we get these enormous rain bombs, as the scientists call them now. And some of the cities here have experienced this. I live in Nashville, where we had a rain bomb a few years ago. Thousands of my neighbors lost their homes and businesses, and none had flood insurance because it had never ever flooded in living memory in the areas affected. But in any case, it is telling that today, as we meet, we have these two storms on opposite sides of the world impacting cities simultaneously. And Tropical Storm Olivia is aiming toward Hawaii, another one. And we're less than a month past the all-time record fire here in California, the Mendocino Complex fire, also had tragic, and every year the records are broken now. And there was a fire tornado in that complex, 300 meters across at the base. I had a training with the Climate Reality Project in Los Angeles just 2 weeks ago, and the head of CAL FIRE, the state's leading firefighter, and one of the leaders of the Australian firefighters, and the woman who's the fire chief in Big Sur were describing how these fires have completely changed in the last few years. That fire tornado had temperatures of 1,400 degrees and wind speeds that are comparable to the ones in Hurricane Florence and Super Typhoon Mangkhut. So the evidence that we must change is so palpable, so visceral, so obvious to most of us. And I think even those who feel an allegiance to political parties and groups and ideologies that tell them the badge of membership keeps them from acknowledging this, they're beginning to find their own ways of saying, yeah, this is pretty strange what's happening. Maybe we need to take stock. And of course, cities know that we have to change, because cities are always on the front lines, and ever more so, of course, throughout human history. No more than 15% of humanity lived in cities, and now it's well over 50%, on the way to 70%. Cities are where it's happening. Cities are where the solutions are being found. Cities, for reasons that I'm not sure I fully understand, but many of you may understand them, are becoming much more responsive to the demands for change and much more creative in finding policy solutions. So thank you for that as well. And cities, of course, account for more than 70% of the greenhouse gas emissions, so the solutions that cities arrive at have leverage over the global response. So By the way, this Florence hurricane is reminiscent of the one just 1 year ago that hit Houston, Texas, dropping 5 feet of rain. Our friends from Canada here, I was visiting with my friend Gregor Robertson, others, and this is really unusual. What happened with Hurricane Harvey is happening now with Hurricane Florence. Not only is it stronger with much more rain, moisture contained and a larger storm surge, but it's being held in place. And I mentioned Canada because the largest waterfalls in North America are Niagara Falls. If you can picture it, think of the full flow of Niagara Falls for 500 days. That's how much water was dumped in Texas and Louisiana during 5 days. In some areas, it was a once in 500,000 year event. Why? Well, the scientists have long been, some of them long have been predicting it, and now the consensus is emerging that we're messing with the wind currents, the jet streams. The whole climate system is, in the words of a scientist 30 years ago, a giant engine for redistributing heat from the equator to the poles. And the patterns that emerged after the last ice age ended established the predictable and stable, varying but within limits, the pattern of ocean currents and wind currents. Now the Gulf Stream is slowing down, and that could have consequences. But I want to focus on the jet stream, the Northern Hemisphere jet stream that comes across North America. And usually it moves these storms and other weather systems across the continent and out to the east and north. But now that pattern is defined in part by the ratio of temperature at the equator and the poles, particularly the North Pole for our hemisphere. But because the ice is melting at the North Pole, this is the 3rd year in a row when the North Pole started melting in the middle of the cold polar winter night. No sunlight. And the polar vortex at the North Pole broke in half. Anyway, the ice is melting, revealing the dark ocean and the dark land in the areas surrounding the Arctic Ocean, and so much more of the sunlight is absorbed. That's why the temperatures are increasing 2 to 4 times more quickly at the North Pole than in the tropics. So all these patterns are under pressure to change. The redistribution of heat to the pole isn't following the same pattern. So back to the jet stream. Excuse the geekiness of this. I just got to get this out here. But because it's affecting our lives. I mean, we had a training in Houston just before that monster happened there, and they had 3 once-in-a-thousand-year events during the 4 years prior to that. But in any case, the jet stream is now getting loopier, wavier, and every once in a while disorganizing. And so it doesn't move these systems out. And so Harvey stayed there for 5 days, with his southeastern quadrant over the Gulf of Mexico constantly replenishing the water, so it just kept on pouring into Harris County. That's what they're predicting with Florence. It's just staying there. I hope they're wrong, but that's what the pattern is. So many of you have experienced this. I mentioned the C40 city of Houston, Miami, hello. Same kind of thing, and enhanced by the sea level rise there. I saw fish from the ocean swimming in the streets on a sunny day. When you see an octopus in a parking garage, you think, I mean, maybe you've seen some of those pictures. It's crazy what's happening. And of course, Tokyo was just hit. Just barely spared a direct hit by Typhoon Shanshan. And last week, the Osaka airport was completely shut down, 6,000 people stranded for a day and a half. They had to be rescued by boat. I mean, again, you can go around the world and just pick out the C40 cities. Cape Town almost ran out of water last year because the same heat that's supercharging the water cycle and causing these rain bombs is pulling it out of the soil and creating the conditions for fires, and 129 million trees dead here in California, aka kindling, and more lightning strikes. Paris, worst flooding in 50 years this January, Mayor Hidalgo, and the list goes on. So do we have to change? Yeah, we do. Now, second question, can we change? That's where the excitement comes in, and that's where all of the C40 cities are doing such magnificent work. Cities show us that we can change. Yes, we can change. The leadership in this room today, especially in the absence of leadership from the White House and the majority in the Congress, is an immense source of hope. And how many times I've gone around the world and seen in people's eyes, is there hope? Are we going to be able to do this? Can we do this? And I always give the examples that you are creating with your work. It's so significant and so important. And why wouldn't you? Your cities are on the line, and you have such talent in your cities and such enthusiasm on the part of people who say, look, I can do this, we can do that. Here's another idea. And you're responding and you're giving them the opportunity to demonstrate firsthand how delivering on climate promises is directly in line with many other priorities of an urban agenda. Harry Truman, the former president of the U.S., of course, once said, he said, I spend 95% of my time trying to convince people what they damn well ought to be doing in their own self-interest anyway. And I know that that's what being mayor sometimes feels like, but you're succeeding in getting people to build these coalitions and delivering on policies that improve public health and create jobs. What's the fastest growing job in the United States, by the way, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics? The fastest growing job is solar installer, growing 9 times faster than the average job growth. There are now 5 times as many jobs in solar as in coal. By the way, the famous Coal Museum in Kentucky just put solar panels on its roof and created some jobs that way. Second fastest growing job, wind turbine technician. And we're seeing amazing progress in efficiency improvements of all kinds and retrofitting buildings, creating jobs that way as well. So your climate policies are contributing to healthier, more prosperous cities. And you're taking action to put those policies into effect. Recent research from C40, and what a great staff you have, Ann, and those who have built this organization, a terrific group of women and men. And I mean, I took a picture, and there weren't any men in the picture except for me. I don't know what's going on there, but in any case, the recent research from C40 cities shows that urban climate policies can generate over 14 million jobs, prevent 1.3 million premature deaths annually by 2030. I mean, what's not to like? Jobs, better health, growing prosperity. This is what it's all about. And that's why, among the reasons why, C40 cities are on the front lines of the climate fight. All 96 member cities have taken strong and substantive steps to address the climate crisis while also working to provide a better quality of life for your citizens. Cities that have signed on to C40's Green and Healthy Streets Declaration, including Paris and Mexico City and Los Angeles, have pledged to procure only zero-emission buses from 2025 going forward. Promoting walking, cycling, public transport. You've heard about these things earlier, and they pledged to make a major area of their cities a zero emissions zone by 2030. By the way, two other C40 cities, Shanghai and Shenzhen, are already buying only electric buses. And with the urbanization process accelerating around the world, dealing with congestion and local air pollution and helping to solve the climate crisis at the same time, it's a fantastic combination of benefits. Cities that have joined C40's net zero carbon buildings declaration, including London, Tokyo, and New York City, have pledged to enact regulations and policies to ensure that all new buildings operate at net zero emissions by 2030, and that all buildings become net zero by 2050. Cities that have signed on to C40's Advancing Towards Zero Waste Declaration, including Dubai, Washington, D.C., and Sydney, have pledged to reduce the amount of waste that they generate by 15% by 2030, reduce municipal solid waste disposed to landfill or incineration. I've got a heat lamp behind me, by the way. And increase diversion away from landfill and incineration by 70%. That is fantastic. And I could go on with the list of what the C40 cities individually are doing and what you are doing collectively. But the answer to that second question, can we change, is a resounding yes. The cost of renewable energy has been plummeting. Everybody knows that. In most geographies, it's now cheaper than electricity from fossil fuel. In Texas, several new utilities have a new rate plan from 9 p.m. at night to 6 a.m. the next morning. Use all the electricity you want for free, no charge. And we're approaching zero marginal cost for a growing number of hours each day. And the batteries are getting better, more cost-effective, more efficient. Electric cars and precision and efficiency. We are in the early stages of a sustainability revolution that's empowered in part by the new digital tools of the Internet of Things and machine learning and artificial intelligence and ultra-high precision tooling and machining. One example from the Bay Area here, Google has the biggest server farms in the world. They asked their AI company DeepMind to try to cut down on the energy use in all those servers. With no new hardware and increased output of processed information, they reduced the electricity by 56%. And there are thousands of use cases where this same accomplishment can take place. We're seeing it all over the world. This sustainability revolution gives executive teams the ability to manage electrons and atoms and molecules with the same precision the IT companies have demonstrated in managing bits of information. It has the magnitude of the Industrial Revolution with the speed of the digital revolution. And it's more disruptive, will be, than the digital revolution was. And it's giving us hope. It's giving us the ability to solve this climate crisis. And the solutions, again, are being implemented in cities. So can we change? Yes, we can change. Now, the final question, the most important question, will we change? Your progress is important and impressive, but of course, as you know, we cannot become complacent. We are still not winning. We are gaining on the problem, but the problem is still getting worse at a very rapid rate. So we have much more work to do. A great economist who died about a decade ago, Rudy Dornbush, once said, "Things take longer to happen than you think they will, but then they happen much faster than you thought they could." That's the inflection point we're at right now with the climate crisis. But we've got to keep going. And we are looking to you, all of us, because cities are where this question, will we change, be answered. On the global level, it's magnificent that we got the Paris Agreement. Fantastic. And Mayor Hidalgo, thank you for hosting that event. It was really a fantastic success. "193 of the 195 nations signed that agreement. Then Syria and Nicaragua joined, and all 195 nations in the world became legally committed to go to net zero greenhouse pollution by mid-century." And I know what you're thinking. Yes, Donald Trump made a speech. But under the law, and we are in the U.S. a nation under law as of today, and we will remain so. Under the law, the first day the United States can legally withdraw from the Paris Agreement happens to be the first day after the next presidential election. So we have the answer to that. And if there is a new president, forgive me for a moment, a new president, nothing partisan about prayer, a new president could simply give 30 days notice and the U.S. is back in. And the U.S. is on track to meet our commitments anyway. China and India are on track to way overachieve their commitments. And we're coming up on the first 5-year review period where the advances in technology and the sustainability revolution makes it much easier for cities, for nations, for regional governments to show greater ambition and increase their commitments. This is one of the key features of the Paris Agreement. It starts at a level that's not nearly sufficient to meet what the laws of physics require, but it has a built-in escalator of ambition, and cities are showing the way for how we can get there. It was a monumental step forward, but only more aggressive, more ambitious, and faster action from cities and all levels of government will take this collective action to the level of efficacy and success that we must achieve. So in closing, let me go back to where I began and say thank you. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I'm serious. I wish you could feel the emotion that I have in my heart when I tell people about all the hope that's being generated by the C40 cities. The world is looking to you. The world is building expectations for more. You know that, and you are meeting those expectations. So yes, some people say, they doubt that we have the requisite political will to succeed. Don't let them say that. Remind them that political will is itself a renewable resource. Thank you, C40, and thank you for having me here. Thank you. Thank you very much.